Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this online event organized by the Turkish Wind Energy Association. My name is Giles Dixon. I am the CEO of Wind Europe, and it's my great pleasure to introduce to you 5 excellent panelists that we have for the next 1 hour and a half, who are going to be talking about the outlook for wind energy in Turkey. The 5 panelists come from the 5 large European wind turbine manufacturers. We have José Luis Blanco of Nordex. We have Lars Bonde-Krogsgaard of Siemens Gamesa. We have Mana Al-Manif from GE, Javier Rodriguez Diaz from Vestas, and Marcos Orlowski from Enercon. I'm going to give each of our 5 panelists 5 minutes each at the start to tell us something about their company and their company's perspective on the energy transition from a global standpoint. How do they see the energy transition globally? How do they see the role of wind energy within that? What are their goals and their ambitions for the further expansion of wind energy? And crucially, how does Turkey fit into their global ambitions for wind and the energy transition? And José Luis, I'm going to begin with you. So ladies and gentlemen, José Luis Blanco, the CEO of Nordex. José Luis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Giles. Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, to share with you our view about the market, about Turkey, about what's going on in the world. First, as an introduction, I'm here on behalf of Nordex. As you know, Nordex is a global onshore wind turbine company, headquartered and listed in Germany, founded in 1985, and with track record of more than 30 gigawatts installed in 40 countries. Out of those, almost 10% in Turkey, and we will go back to that. 21 gigawatts under service and 6 gigawatts a year order intake, one of the fastest growing order intake companies in the onshore business. More or less, we do slightly more than 50% of our business in Europe. Turkey is one of the biggest markets for us, 50% Americas, Australia, South Africa. We have a global footprint. Turkey is an important part of our global footprint as well, to serve our customers locally and globally, meeting the requirements in the markets we operate. Talking about the mega trends, I think there is going to be, I'm sure, is going to be consensus among the participants that the wave of fighting climate change is better than ever before. After the elections in the US, the big momentum in Europe, in the European Green Deal, minor effect, PTC extended, but the important aspect in our view is US rejoining the Paris Accord and clear commitments to fight climate change, the same as China. So the health of the system, of the sector is like never before. The competitive of our technology across the sector is like never before. So we are definitely in the right part of the history, and we can contribute very much to society, to governments, and to citizens to meet the targets and the objectives that society wants and is committed to achieve. So talking specifically about Turkey, I would say Turkey is home for Nordex. Is one of the key Nordex markets. We are market leader in that market since 2017, increasing market share, close to 2.5 gigawatts installed. It's as well a very important home for our production hub. We have local production, but on top we export blades, towers, cranes, contractors, teams. We provide from Turkey service to other European countries, and even we export senior management. The head of our biggest region, Europe, is a former colleague of us, Lars, myself, Ibrahim Öcarslan, very well known in Turkey, runs 60% of our company. So what this is telling us is that the previous policies were very good to develop market, to develop supply chain, to develop companies, to develop know-how, and to export those globally. I think Turkey has the opportunity to keep doing that and even to improve, but the right policies, like in many other markets, are needed. And with the right policies, Turkey has the land, the infrastructure, the talent, the industry to play a big role in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that, José Luis. I'm now going to give the floor, ladies and gentlemen, to the CEO onshore wind at Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy, Lars Bonde Krogsgaard. Lars, the floor is yours.
Stage, but I'll try to do it with the same degree of enthusiasm. So Siemens Gamesa, I don't think we need a lot of presentation in this circle among the largest wind turbine manufacturers in the world, with a very significant position also in offshore wind. To give you a little bit of perspective of how we see the world right now and the status of the energy transition, I brought with me a few points that I wanted to share with you. And I would share the optimism of José Luis when it comes to the future, but with some challenges ahead. I mean, firstly, fundamentally, we see a potential that the COVID pandemic could, despite the terrible loss and sacrifice that has led to, mean something positive for our industry and renewable energy. The crisis is seen by many governments also as an opportunity or a reason for driving renewable energy investments, and we think that will benefit us. In the last 6 months, we have seen governments and we have seen supranational bodies making renewable energy an even more core component of their recovery plans. We saw the European Parliament vote to raise the 2030 emissions target significantly. We've seen China with an announcement of a zero emissions goal by 2060. And we're now seeing also renewable energy pop up in discussions in the US after the election in a manner where it's being used as an instrument that could drive local job creation and the economy going forward. We are positive when we look at the markets where they're going. We see a few markets contributing a very significant share of the total growth going forward. China, the US, we see India, and we also see Germany in that landscape. And then we have a group of countries that will fill a lot, but not exactly at the same level. Markets like Brazil, it's markets like France, and it's markets like Sweden and Spain, from where we just had very low priced auction results that I'm sure my colleagues are also studying with interest, demonstrating really how far we have come when it is about making renewable energy super competitive with other energy sources. We also see, particularly relevant to our business, we see a very significant growth in offshore wind, and we are now seeing studies that predict that within a 20-25 year time span, we could see offshore potentially even overtake onshore in terms of contributions to the overall energy landscape, that is a dramatic development if that would happen. And we're seeing a strong, also on our side, we're seeing a very strong service business that continues to grow at very attractive growth rates, not least in the onshore segment. And to participate in all that, we're working a lot with technology, as my good competitors here are also doing. Turbine ratings are increasing. We are seeing still larger. We're seeing still larger rotors, and we're there with new technology that is selling well into the marketplace. And then perhaps in the periphery of the development, one thing that we find very important is that we also, as companies involved in renewable energy, play our own role by reducing our carbon footprints. We are now in a position where we're making certain that all our operations are supplied with renewable electricity, not at 100% yet, but we are certainly ambitious towards getting there. And we're also working in the supply chain to drive reductions of indirect emissions, if you will. For example, by talking to our suppliers, for example, in the tower manufacturing segment, about how they can reduce carbon emissions into the atmosphere. So all in all, I think it's been a strange year for all of us. I think we're still here as an industry. The outlook is looking good. I believe we will come back to the specifics about the Turkish market when you pose questions later on, Giles. But we are also optimistic about the perspectives for growth there.
Thank you very much indeed, Lars, for that. I now give the floor to Mana Al-Menif, who is the President and CEO of Middle East, North Africa, Turkey at GE Renewable Energy. Mana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giles, and thank you for having me part of this esteemed panel. It's a privilege to be with all of you today. Needless to say, Giles and team, that the energy transition is there, and it's not only happening in Turkey, it's happening across the globe. To allow this energy transition, primarily, wind energy play a major role in this transition, as well as there is a major focus on the innovation. Innovation is one of the major enablers that will allow the energy transition to move in the right track. Innovation that comes into technology, innovations in the industry itself, but also to support this innovation to continue and to move the needle in this energy transition, you need to have the right regulatory framework, the right policies in place to allow these technologies to actually develop further and improve. If you just have a snap look and look at how did this industry evolve in the last 10 years, the progress is phenomenal. Today, renewable energy is more competitive than fossil fuel in many parts of the world, and is going to continue. Prices is continuing going down. And this is enabled by the development of the technologies. Today, as my colleagues have mentioned, you're seeing larger turbines with larger rotor diameters. Everyone is focusing on bringing the cost of energy down and to be more competitive. And this is really putting a lot of pressure both on the developers as well as in the OEM to make sure they create the right formula that will enable this industry to be sustainable and move in the right track. One of the things, example, if I focus primarily on Turkey, Turkey was one of the first implementer, I would say, in the MENAT region. They've put a very strong regulatory system, the feed-in tariff. They had the right process in place, and we saw a very good say-to-do ratio. And we saw at least the number of projects that was executed between 19 and 20 and 21 is really a big spike in the Turkish market, which gave a lot of confidence to most of the OEM as well as the developers. Now, the question is what's happening next? And I think so this is an area that we will speak about in the panel later on. But the necessity to have a very strong, clear regulatory system to explain what's there in the market, what's happening is something that's very important. If I just share with you a snapshot on what GE is doing in the Turkish market. Turkey is a very important market, as it was to my colleagues as well. It's a market that proved to be a success. We believe that localization in this market is very successful. There is the right talent, the right system in place to allow it to be a competitive place to localize. GE today have over 1.5 gigawatt of installed capacity across 35 wind turbines, and we are in the process now of installing another 1 gigawatt that should be completed by the end of 2021. So we believe the market is very strong. We are very committed to the market, where I can share with you more details as we go on.
Mana, thank you very much indeed for that. Could I just ask you one very quick question to clarify something you said? I think I heard you talk about the say to do ratio. Is that right?
Correct.
I like that term. I'd not heard it before. Thank you very much. I guess it means government says it's going to do something and it does it. Yes?
Indeed.
Okay, thank you for that. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Javier Rodriguez Diez, who is President for Southern Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America at Vestas. Javier, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me and having the opportunity to share with you our vision of the market and how Vestas is seeing the energy transition, and also how do we play that transition in the Turkish market. First of all, energy transition, I think that is the cornerstone of the development of the planet for a better quality of life. But at the same time, 2/3 of the gas greenhouse emissions are coming from energy. And I think that the millions of people by 2030 will die due to causes associated with climate change. And I think that this is how serious is the energy transition. That requires to reach all the targets. All the governments are putting very ambitious targets, where I share with all my colleagues that we are very excited to share with them. But that requires a profound energy change. And I think that, that as an industry, we are prepared to respond to that change. I think that the main challenge is to deliver affordable, renewable, and sustainable energy. And I think that, that we are prepared for that challenge, and we are committed as Vestas for that. Why I'm saying that? I think that, well, first of all the people represented here, and Vestas in particular, we have the experience. In Vestas, we have already installed 122 gigawatts of wind turbines worldwide, more than 82 countries. We have the experience, we have the legacy, the experience. We have been doing that for more than 40 years. We have the data. We are servicing right now 108 gigawatts of wind energy with data 24/7. We have the products. We have shown all the manufacturers have shown that we have products that can adapt to any kind of site. So different temperatures, different climate packages, hub heights, rotor diameters, wind speeds, the wind speed, turbulence. So we have the product to do that. Then, of course, we have the people. I think that the industry has developed a lot of knowledge during the last years. And I think that we are proud to have 25,000 employees fully dedicated to renewable energy. And we are sustainable. We are, as Lars was saying before, we have a strong sustainable agenda. In Vestas, we are basing that sustainability agenda in 3 main pillars. First of all, being carbon neutral without any kind of offsets by 2030. Secondly, to produce zero waste turbines by 2040. And then to be the safest and more inclusive company in the energy sector. So all in all, I think that the industry is ready to tackle that challenge that I was mentioning at the beginning, but it requires a profound change in the way that the energy is perceived. Talking specifically about Turkey, Turkey has been always a very active market in the sector, and we are very happy with the targets that have been set. In Vestas, we started our journey in Turkey 23 years ago. In 1998, we installed our first turbine. Today, we have close to 2 gigawatts installed, and we have 4 service and training centers. But it's also important, the work that all of us have done in order to develop the supply chain, the local supply chain. So today in Turkey, it can be produced the main components of wind turbines. We are talking about blades, we are talking about towers, we are talking about generators. that are used not only in Turkey, but it's a very competitive supply chain that is exporting worldwide their products. I think that Turkey has to be very happy and very proud of the effort that has been done in the supply chain. So all in all, and just finishing, I think that we are very happy with the situation of the market. I think that the market looks very exciting in the coming years. There's going to be a profound energy transition in the coming years. And as an industry, we have to be prepared and we have to respond to that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier. And finally, for his opening intervention, I give the floor to Markus Orlowski, Head of Business Development at Enercon. Markus, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, a welcome from my side. Thank you very much for being here. Well, the previous speakers have mentioned already a lot on the general market aspects. Despite the current pandemic and its effects, it has on some countries and some regions. At Enercon, we are also certain that the overall and global demand for wind energy and with this for wind energy converter will remain very stable. So, as my previous speakers have said, the business is there. Based on this belief, we are continuing with the reorientation of Enercon, which we have started roughly 1.5 years ago. We are reducing the focus on Germany, and with this our dependency on the German market, and are more open for international projects. Last year we were very successful in Asia and South America. This does not mean that we take on each and every project now. We are also looking very closely on project risk and refrain from projects more often in order to not endanger the overall profitability. But of course, there's no need for us to be more open for projects in Turkey. We have done our first project in Turkey in 1997 and have reached just weeks ago the milestone of 2 gigawatt installed. And we are of course also working currently intensely on the projects for IK2. So Turkey is an important market for Enercon, but not only a market. Turkey is also an important production and sourcing hub. Over the last 1.5 years, we have also continuously enlarged our project portfolio. Towers, blades, and generators for the new turbines of our EP3 platform are already produced and sourced in Turkey. For the new turbines of our EP5 platform, we are evaluating the sourcing possibilities in Turkey. So again, Turkey is for Enercon an important market with important projects and also an important production and sourcing hub. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Markus, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to get into discussion. And I'm going to ask a series of questions to our 5 panelists. I would like you to be part of this discussion as well. If you have questions, please indicate to the organizers, and we will try to bring as many of them into the discussion as we possibly can. And if I could say something to the 5 of you panelists, please feel free to challenge each other and to respond to each other's comments. It shouldn't just be me asking the questions here. Now, José Luis, I'm going to put the first question to you first. You said the previous policies of the Turkish government were very good and the right policies are needed going forward. Let me go straight into the detail. One of the main previous policies underpinning the expansion of wind in Turkey, the YEKDEM support scheme, has now finished. It's not clear yet what its successor will be. The YEKA auction system continues, but we don't know yet when the next YEKA auction will take place. What do you think, José Luis, the Turkish government should do on auctions and support schemes for wind energy?
And this is a very good question. I think our sector accomplished the most difficult part, which is from being in a pre-competitive stage to being one of the most competitive ways to produce new electricity, and on top is carbon-free and sustainable, and gives back to society the investment that the society has done in our sector. So crucial part. But this crucial part doesn't help if you don't have the right regulation in place. And that's the same in Turkey as everywhere in the world. You can have a very competitive solution, but the ecosystem needs to provide regulation, which first and most important thing should give visibility, predictability to the market participants to do their investment decisions and to take their strategies on the different markets. It's very important from a wind turbine company to have a stable flow of projects. We are that competitive because we have a very good rate of utilization of our factories worldwide. So if we start one and offs because there is no stability in the deal flow, the employment is going to suffer, and the competitiveness of the sector is going to suffer as well. So we are there because the legislation was providing that stable flow of orders, the development path, the competitiveness path of the development, and so on and so forth. So a stable legislation, which should provide a stable flow, visibility to the market participants. We advocate for regulators and politicians to consider the end-to-end value creation of our sector, because solar PV is renewable as well, but we strongly encourage regulators all over the world to assess the end-to-end value creation from design, manufacturing, construction, servicing, and so on and so forth. Eventually advocate as well today to take that value creation into the equation of the support mechanism that they will provide. Eventually that they will take into consideration the value of the kilowatt hour over time, not just the price of the kilowatt hour. So considering in general the end-to-end value creation for society, and giving back to our industry and to our customers some part of that value creation in support mechanisms which help our customers to accelerate the deployment of the technology in the marketplace. Whatever this support mechanism is and whatever this legislation is, we strongly advocate as well for not interrupting abruptly the sector. So try to put in place a sort of a bridge. Could be many factors, granted the regime for extension of wind farms whatsoever, but try to have a bridge from the previous system to the future system, whatever the future system is. And again, stability, predictability, so the market participants can make their call and take into consideration end-to-end value creation.
Thank you very much, José Luis, for that. There are a number of Turkish government officials listening among the 1,500 participants who've registered for this event, and I'm sure they will have taken very careful note of what you have said, and they will be taking very careful note of what the rest of you say on this question and others. I'm struck, José Luis, by what you say about the end-to-end value creation. Do you have any specific thoughts on how that should be reflected in the support scheme? You say it should be factored in. And how would you measure the value of a kilowatt hour over time as opposed to the price of a kilowatt hour that is sold into the market today?
So I'm here advocating for renewables, but we need as well to put certain market mechanisms. Is not the same the kilowatt hour produced in a solar PV panel plant during the day and the sunny days than a kilowatt hour produced in a wind turbine system. Has a different value for the system and for the consumers. When we talk about end-to-end value creation, and without entering very much into into, let's say, shaky territory. If you analyze the Turkish liras created by a wind farm compared to the Turkish liras created with a solar PV plant, the return to citizens and the return to taxpayers is completely different in terms of man hours, in terms of taxes, in terms of value creation for the country. On top, we are exporting Turkish products that generate employment, taxes, wealth into the community, that, in our humble opinion, should be taken into consideration in order to give back certain value creation in a sort of incentive mechanism for our customers to deploy faster the technology. So, long history short, I don't think it's fair to compare the kilowatt hour produced with imported panels from whatever and imported converters with a kilowatt hour produced with local supply chain that on top export Turkish products and Turkish talent contributing to the Turkish economy.
Understood. Thank you very much for that, José Luis. And it's just worth reminding ourselves and all of the audience that all of the wind turbines that are built in Turkey now are, of course, made in Turkey. Lars, what are your thoughts on these issues around support schemes?
Well, I think the point that José Luis made about having a fair comparison to solar PV, I think that's a really important point for us as an industry, and I think it is a reasonable argument to make. Adding a few comments to José Luis's thoughts. I mean, for us, it's also about having certainty of a regulatory framework, making sure that long-term planning is in place. Perhaps if we talk about some specific issues that we consider important in the Turkish market, then it's stuff like addressing the challenges with bankability of projects that we have been having. I mean, is there a way in which Turkey could integrate into its legislation opportunities to assist projects better going forward, also to avoid these swings in volume that we've seen in the past? It is stuff like helping the permitting process, and for us, of course, very much really to ensure this kind of long-term basis that supports all the investments that we have been making in factories in Turkey and in the Turkish supply chain. And then there's a separate thing that I would like to raise, and some of you will have seen me in Turkey before. I have a fairly long business history there, and it's great to be back, by the way. And I guess this is my version of the say to do ratio that was on the table before, which I also really like. And my comment is this: I think that Turkey should measure itself not on what it says, but what it does. And I think the Turkey should really measure success in the wind industry as to what, in terms of what actually gets built. And there, I think governments, and we face various requirements on local content around the world, but governments should really be realistic in the pricing that can carry all these extra costs that we have to get going. And to me, there is an element of political responsibility in also making sure that auction levels or tariffs in whatever form they may be decided upon, that they are actually sufficient to support construction of the wind farms. And we have seen in the past, many years ago now, but we have seen in the past, for example, that the licensing processes in Turkey were such that it was simply too easy to get in, but not much came out of it, and that kind of had to led to a revision of Turkish legislation around wind energy in the country that led to a much more efficient build out of capacity. So this is an invitation, I guess, to Turkish policymakers and the administration to make sure that whatever schemes you draw up, that you make certain that they are sufficient to actually enable the growth that we can deliver. And then again, I totally agree with the wise comment made by José Luis on making certain that you compare solar PV with wind power on a fair basis.
Thank you very much for that, Lars. Javier, I'm going to put the question to you now on support schemes, and I'd like to add a further angle to it. José Luis and Lars have talked about the importance of visibility, predictability, bankability. They agree on the need to reflect in the new support scheme the end-to-end value creation, the distinctive contribution of wind energy here. Neither José Luis nor Lars have talked about having a new support scheme that is as similar as possible to the old one. Some people might say, well, don't change the old YECDEM too much because it's easier if you have something that's similar to what has gone before. But we've not heard that yet in this discussion. Some people say we don't want to avoid a gap of 12 months while the government designs a brand new system that looks very different. Again, we've not heard that. So, I mean, if you could reflect also on those considerations, Javier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that building on the points that have been mentioned before, what we need in order to develop that supply chain and to develop that local content is stability and a continuous flow of projects or a continuous flow of volume. Having said so, we have seen in the past that many governments worldwide, they were competing to design the mechanism that breaks a new record in terms of low price of electricity, which in our view, or in my view, in my personal view, is not the right way of solving the problem. Why? Because we have to see on those markets how many real megawatts have been built under that conditions. So I think that a system that is successful is a system that proves that after X years, the targets have been met. And that's not what has happened in many markets. Now, going specifically about your question, I think that the Turkish market has proved, and we have seen at the beginning that the five of us have said that we are proud of what we have said, what we have done in Turkey, and we are very optimistic about the future of the market. However, we have a lot of experience in auctions worldwide. Let's copy the good examples and let's secure that those targets are met. I'm not saying a complete change of the structure of the system of Turkey, but there are things to improve. And the things to improve have to go in the direction of materializing each and every project that has been awarded. That I think that this is the key factor that we have to solve in Turkey.
Thank you very much for that, Javier. Mana, I'm going to put the same questions to you now on the future support schemes. Javier has talked about the importance of copying good practice elsewhere. There's a general consensus in the wind industry that the best auction design is the two-sided contract for difference. Might that be a good model for Turkey? Mana?
Well, I agree with what most of my colleagues have said. I think so the most important things for us in Turkey is to have this visibility. YECDEM was a success because it was built on very strong rules. It had the right developers, they came in, though that there was a bit of challenge in the financing, but the Turkish market is very resilient. So they were able to close most of the projects. Few of them didn't, but the majority did. So that was a successful system that was put in place. The question now is, what is the new system that's going to come in place? Is it only going to take one part of the equation, which is price? Or is it going to look at the entire value chain, which is the localization that Turkey cares a great deal about, job creation and sustainability? In order to create that, and projects that can be financed, which is something that's very important. In order to do all of that, you need to create a mechanism that's very clear, that will take account into all of these things, as well as communicate it. You know, as an OEM, I'm sure all of my colleagues as well say the same thing. In order for you to say that I'm going to continue, you need to have a very visible pipeline, clear over the next 5 years, what's going to come, what is the regulation, and how to be able to capture it. Because you need to develop your supply chain. You need to develop your capabilities to capture some of that market. Today, this is the area that's not clear until now. What's next and how sustainable? And I would agree with the comment that countries should be measured based on what they build. I think so. YECDEM proved to be a success. Now we need to make sure that we maintain the say-to-do ratio in the other schemes that's been done, the auctions, regardless if it's the positive bid or negative, the YECA and so on. We really need to start monitoring. And one of the things that I would agree with what Javier have said is we need to make sure that all of these projects that's been awarded is the timeline. There have to be certain timeline to build to ensure that you're seeing all of these initiatives on the ground, instead of keeping it as an open end, just within certain timeline to address exactly, was this a good practice? Is it sustainable? Because you're taking these learnings to somewhere else as well.
Thank you for that, Mana. Now, Marcus, same questions to you about the future support schemes.
Well, I think the clarity, what the colleagues have already said, are an important point. Turkey has been a success story over the last years, so this is something we all agree on. And I want to emphasize something José Luis has said. If you start to change the current systems, the feed-in tariffs, the local content scheme, etc., you should do this very, very carefully and having the effects in mind. And what he said with respect to the bridge, I think this is also very, very important. As Mana has said, the OEMs and also the project developers, we have to adapt to the new rules. And we cannot do this from one day to the other. We cannot just switch a key and then we are working in this way. So I think if there are changes, which again should be very, very carefully being done, there should also be some kind of mechanism to transfer the old system, the very, very successful system, into a new system and give us time to adapt to this new system.
That is very clear. Thank you very much, Marcus. Can I put a follow-up question to you, Marcus? And after you've answered it, then I would open that question to any of the other four of you. Lars talked about bankability. None of you have mentioned the word currency. Marcus, in what currency should any future support scheme be denominated?
Well, this is, of course, a difficult question. There is the current critical situation, the pandemic, which has an impact on the markets. We have the financial situation in Turkey. So, of course, for us, it would be, as a manufacturer, it would be, and also, I guess, for the project developers, it would be very, very good if the currency is dollar, is euro, or there is a clear link between the Turkish tariff and one of these currencies. This is, of course, difficult, I know that, but this is something which gives not only us as the manufacturer, but also as for the banks and for the project developers, the certainty that their business model will work out in the long run. I think this is something which has to be kept in mind, that there's someone investing into the projects, and so has to be sure that his business model works out. There has to be some kind of escalation mechanism to support changes in the markets, of course. But I think this is something which is important. There might also be some possibilities to lessen the impact of the financial situation. We see with respect to bankability some problems in financing. So perhaps there's also the possibility for the Turkish government to put in place some kind of support scheme for exports, for example, like Hermes, like Exim. These perhaps are measures to support the financial situation just beneath the currency issue.
Thank you very much for that, Marcus. Any thoughts from any of the other four of you on the currency issue? And more broadly, any thoughts on what Marcus has said about the financing of projects beyond the government support schemes?
If I may, Giles, I think, and this is, I think my colleagues will agree, ECA was a crucial success factor of the success of the Turkish market. So regulator needs to take very well into account how to develop the scheme in a way that that our customers can still use ECA support. Because if it's very much sided, that could trigger difficulties to hedge the non-lira portion over many years, and as well to hedge the capex, because there is no possibilities. There are certain components that by nature are worldwide commodities and either euro or US dollar denominated. So no way to have local currency for those. So keeping in mind that export credit support was a big part of the previous success is strongly encouraged.
And do you have any thoughts also, Jose Luis, on export credit support from the Turkish government for equipment that is exported out of your factories outside of Turkey? I mean, 80% of what the five of you are making inside Turkey is exported outside of Turkey. And it's competing against Chinese turbines in markets across Asia, Africa, Latin America, Chinese turbines, which often come with a very generous state-backed finance offer, of course.
I think this might change company to company. In our case, it's appreciated, but it's not a critical factor for us. It's better that Turkey take the advantage of export credit agencies that our companies, one way or the other, use to support the bankability of the Turkish projects. In our case, it's Euler Hermes, and in the case of our colleagues, it's a different export credit from a different country. But in all the cases, crucial for the bankability of the project. So if you don't keep that in mind, that might risk the possibility of several projects to be financed.
Okay, thank you, Jose Luis. Lars, Javier, or Mana, any further thoughts on the wider currency financing export credit nexus of issues?
No, I mean, I guess it is a major issue, and it has been a major issue in the past that we had a very significant volatility around the Turkish lira, and the more authorities can do to help us there in terms of reducing that risk and enabling financing of projects, the better. I think there are ways in which it can be dealt with. I think we can also cater for some of the risk in the export credit schemes that are in place, but it is an important and a real factor in Turkey. So a link, as Marcus was saying, a link to dollar, or at least a denomination of a significant part of tariffs to a dollar or euro, that would be very, very helpful indeed.
Okay. Javier, Mana, Javier.
Yeah, I think that I can only agree with what has been said. If we want to attract foreign investments and we want to grow the market at the speed as the targets are saying, we need to have those supports to allow the bankability. So yes, there are certain parts of the turbine, and Jose Luis was mentioning them, that are euro or dollar denominated. So I think that in some way we need to tackle that problem into the regulation. So that will attract export credit agencies that can operate, that will allow us to hedge commodities, some of the commodities that are used in the turbine, and that will attract much more actors to the market, which mean more competitiveness and faster growth. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mana, any thoughts on this?
No, I agree with everything that was said. I think so. Turkey have great wind resources, and it can really grow significantly. The main challenge that you have is the bankability and financing. And if you look across the board with every investor that's focusing on wind specifically, financing is a major part. So whenever they select the technology, the first question is how can I finance it? And unless that there is a system, a strong system in place that will be able to take this currency fluctuation, it's going to be extremely challenging.
Okay, thank you for that, Mana. Lars, you mentioned permitting. Now, in continental Europe, permitting is our #1 challenge for the further expansion of wind energy, especially onshore wind. How big a problem is it in Turkey? And if it is a major problem, what should the government be doing to simplify permitting rules and procedures?
Well, I think let me start with a good thing when we look at Turkey concerning permitting, and a good thing is that it is relatively easy to change turbines, and that's great because in many markets, time flies. Our customers are waiting for turbines, and something new happens on the technology side. And the ability at that point in time to drop a new turbine on the project, to optimize technology, that is in the interest of all involved parties, the turbine manufacturer, the customer, and certainly also the Turkish energy system. So that's great. I think where we do see some challenges is that that although things have improved somewhat from former times, we still have a lot of authorities involved in permitting processes in Turkey. All of that needs to come together. I don't know on the top of my head now whether it's 10 or 15 or 20 authorities, but it is a large number of different offices that have to give their go to projects. And the more we can do to have that process streamlined in the form of one-stop shopping processes like we're seeing in some other markets, I mean, the better. Really for the industry. So help on that front would be great, but super that Turkey has made it relatively easy to change technology on projects so that we can put the best turbines on the sites.
Great, thank you, Lars. Mana, what do you think on permitting?
I would agree with what Lars have said. The process is unclear and sometimes it's unpredictable. It takes between 2 to 4 years to get the permitting. And the main challenge is that you have too many authorities involved. It would make much more sense if you actually consolidate and just make it clear, streamline it to one authority that is responsible to give this permitting process. There is pros and cons, obviously, for each step of doing that. But one of the main areas that because of this lengthy permitting process, there is a lot of projects that do not make it, unfortunately. And that impact the speed of development of these projects. So it is an area that needs to be worked on. I think so the clarity, predictability, clear timelines is something that will be highly appreciated.
Okay, thank you for that, Mana. Under EU law now, it is a binding legal requirement for every member state of the EU to have a one-stop shop for all permit applications for wind and solar projects, and that comes into force, that new rule, in June of this year. Javier, what are your thoughts on permitting in Turkey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are 3 parameters. It's flexibility, it's coordination between all the authorities, and it's speed. Flexibility is in order to use the latest technology, you need to have a continuous revision if the technology that you are using is the most adequate to the project. We are bringing new products and new improvements continuously to the market. And it's, in some cases, it's a little bit disappointing that seeing that you are building projects, or our customers are building projects with turbines that were designed 5-10 years ago. So it's a pity, it's a waste of technology, let's call it. Coordination, you mentioned that, so there has to be a clear point of contact in the administration on who gives what permit and when. And then absolutely speed. I think that we are saying, we were talking at the beginning that we want the projects to materialize, and what it cannot be is that our customers takes a lot of time trying to obtain the latest permits, and then everything is compressed, and in some cases even lost one project due to timing. So that are the 3 parameters that I would remark.
Okay, thank you, Javier. Marcus, anything to add on permitting?
Well, we are also very much in favor of this one-stop shop office procedure. I think we have already discussed 1 year ago. So, but perhaps adding some positive aspect, well, during the pandemic, at least we have made the experience that there were a lot of flexibility to react on the situation, even with all these authorities involved in the processes. So I think this is something which is important. There has to be clarity and rules and regulation in place. But in a situation like this, there should be some flexibility in the rules and regulation, in the authorities to let common sense speak and adapt to the situation. I think that's important, especially in times like this.
Good point. And I think we must all thank the Turkish government for the additional 6 months that they gave to you to deliver the final tranche of YEKDEM projects, which of course will lead to a further 2 gigawatts of new installations just in the first part of this year. But it was crucial to have that flexibility because of the impacts of COVID, of course, and the longer time that it was taking to commission projects. Okay, let's talk about grid issues and system integration. The share of wind energy in Turkey's electricity mix is now 9%. It's a significant number, and the higher it gets, the greater the challenge, of course, as in every other country in the world, around system integration. José Luis, how do you see these issues in Turkey? Is Turkey building out the grid quickly enough? Are they doing enough to accommodate the growing share of variable renewables in the electricity mix?
I would say that today, generally speaking, at least in our case, we don't see, together with our customers, major short-term issues. But it's true that if you want to develop the sector at the right speed, the grid needs to be extended to the east. I mean, Turkey is a huge country with enormous potential that today cannot be harvested because very much the grid is developed in the consumption and in the highly populated regions. So definitely, again, a comprehensive country strategy with grid deployment in parallel of the regulation will be highly recommended for the midterm strategic planning of the country. So long history short, short-term looks like it's not a big issue, but it's true that we are doing projects in a very limited part of the huge potential that the country has because grid is not deployed to other regions.
Yeah. Lars, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the eastwards expansion of the grid that is essential if growth really has to happen at the level that is anticipated. I think I'm by no means an expert in Turkish grid conditions, but at least what I'm informed is that as far as connections is concerned, things have improved quite a bit over the years. It has become much better than it was when it came to securing capacity. But of course, what we now need to do is to lay the ground for all the growth that we anticipate, and that is something that has to be regulated in policy and actions at the administrative level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Javier or Marcus. Any further thoughts on grid and system integration issues?
Well, I think that first of all, congratulate of what has happened until now with the grid development in Turkey. It has been amazing what has happened in the last 20 years, but unfortunately, that's not enough for the ambition that the market has in terms of volumes. And then is everything about connecting the best resources that you have in the country with the biggest consumption places that are not located in the same place. So it has been done a lot. It has been remarkable, the evolution during the last years, but it will not be enough for the ambitious targets that all of us share. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Marcus, anything to add?
No, I can only confirm what the colleagues have said. So there are no problems yet, but at least we can only recommend to increase the grid and to expand it to the east. Fully agree with that.
Supply chain operations. Lars, I'm going to start with you with this question. How important to Siemens Gamesa, looking at your total global manufacturing base, are your Turkish operations? Yeah. And same question I'm going to put to others among you. Look at the cost base of your Turkish manufacturing, its efficiency and quality. Any comparisons that you would like to bring out between your Turkish factories and those you have elsewhere?
So,
Lars.
So we are in the special situation that we build facilities to manufacture wind turbines for the Yeka round.
Indeed.
They're built. They're not ramped up yet. That will happen once we get notices to proceed on the project. So we are there with manufacturing facilities, albeit without doing this yet. What we are doing is that we're sourcing a number of important components. We're sourcing towers out of Turkey, and we're also sourcing a significant amount of blades out of Turkey, out of Izmir.
Yeah.
And we are, of course, maturing in preparation for the Yeka round. We are maturing the supply chain in Turkey to assist the production that we will eventually deliver for the Turkish market. And I think it's fair to say that as far as the components that we're currently buying in Turkey, there we have had some quality issues here and there, but by and large that works out, and we can use the components on turbines in various places around the world. I think when you look at the manufacturing facility that we have built to honor the Yeka commitments there, I would say that there's still a lot of footwork that needs to be done in terms of getting component prices for deliveries to our nacelles to get them down. And it's also fair to say that even though Turkey is a strong manufacturing country, which it is, and that's well documented, I think in our industry we still have some way to go before we're fully there in cost and quality versus other markets. And it's important that we get there, right? Because otherwise, any notion of Turkey as an export base is not really realistic. But we believe that with volume and commitments from the government that would allow us to scale up, learn things initially for the Turkish market, we could also potentially do even more out of Turkey.
Okay, thank you. José Luis.
Well, we started the supply chain development in Turkey to meet the requirements for executing our projects in Turkey. And with up and downs, I think we achieve a level where, generally speaking, we can say in blades is competitive, not just for Turkey, that is a requirement, but as well for exporting to other European countries. And we are using our suppliers' Turkish-based facilities to export products to Europe on top of the ones that the Turkish market requires. Same situation happened with towers. It was, a lot of work to develop competitive Turkish tower suppliers for the local content requirements. Initially, they were not as competitive, but currently we are exporting steel towers for many other geographies, Ukraine, Poland, Greece. I mean, many geographies in Europe mainly. Contractors, cranes, civil contractors, the same. It took us, all the market participants, some time to develop very competitive contractors that now we use not only for the Turkish project, but as well in other European projects. Generators is different. I don't think generator is going to be, in our case, we do generators in Turkey to meet the local requirements, but it's an example that the government needs to take into consideration if they want further local content, they need to assess precisely what components can be exported and those that maybe cannot be exported. In the case of generators, we do sell and install Turkish generators in Turkish projects, but unfortunately, that component is not competitive for global consumption. And this is a warning as well. If we want to do further integration in castings or hubs, or very unlikely that we will develop in Turkey a global hub for exporting casted components, for instance. So if that is a requirement for selling to Turkish projects, we will assess the volume, we will assess the business case, we will see the possibilities. But again, the legislation should be drafted carefully to be smart and to replicate, like the case of the towers or the case of the blades, and try to avoid more cases like the generators, where you ended paying a more expensive generator. And that generator is, in our case, maybe that could be different. I'm using that just an example. Mm-hmm. In other cases might be different, but put the local content requirements in components that can be competitive in the local market.
Yeah,
and okay. not to push uncompetitive components that, for whatever reason, the local supply chain, due to nature, due to volume, due to expertise, maybe it's going to be very hard to build.
Okay, thank you. Javier, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, on the positive side, I have to say that Turkey has developed a suppliers base that is very solid, in the sense that it's manufacturing blades, generators, towers that are installed not only in Turkey but exported worldwide, and that's something that means that they have the quality and they have the cost to be competitive both in Turkey and worldwide. That's the positive part. And I think that looking forward, I think that there are two aspects that we have to take into account. First of all, to remain competitive in the long term, you need two things. You need a continuous investment in R&D. So I think that has to be taken into account. It's not just cost. We need to allow different suppliers to have sufficient amount to invest in R&D. And then the second thing is to have a very solid and stable local market that allows to cover the base production. And then with that base production, you can drive improvements, you can have sufficient volume to be competitive worldwide. So very positive evolution, but we have to be careful not to be driven just by cost and then finding that we have factories that are up and down depending on how the local legislation evolves, on how the local demands evolve.
Okay, thank you, Javier. Marcus, your thoughts, including also on local content requirements in any future policy framework?
Yeah, well, at present, we are producing or sourcing in Turkey towers, blades, and generators for EP1 and EP2 platform, and as well as for the new turbines for EP3 platform, and we're also exporting them from Turkey. So, at least for the small platform. So, with this, we are working with more than 500 small, medium, and large enterprises. And I can only confirm what the colleagues have said. So we have no specific problems quality-wise, capability-wise in Turkey. So it's a very elaborated baseline we have industry-wise. We're currently also evaluating sourcing possibilities for the EP5 platform. And so we are looking very intensely into the market. And we have to admit, I think this is also what the colleague have mentioned, that compared to Asian countries, of course, and even to some European countries, Turkey does not really offer lower production cost. So it depends on the location of projects, etc., etc. And so this is something which, for a sourcing decision or a production decision, this is very important to have in mind. And since the pressure on the cost is still very, very high, we have to take care of this, and there has to be possibilities in the market supported by the local content scheme, supported by a substantial market, domestic market. So I think in previous rounds we have discussed 1 gigawatt or 1.5 gigawatt per year, and there has to be some focus on still having thought about reducing costs to be really competitive compared to other markets which are clearly coming up. There are Asian markets which are currently booming. In South America, the markets are booming. And so this is something the Turkish legislation has to keep in mind when redrafting the remuneration system.
Okay, thank you for that, Markus. Mana, is the Turkish government giving enough support to the supply chain and also to the development of R&D capability within Turkey? In continental Europe, we have now persuaded the European Union that they need to beef up their renewables industrial policy. They now get it. And that means more support for research and innovation, for exports, the right sort of trade policies as well. How do you see things in Turkey here?
As what my colleagues have mentioned, the starting point is Turkey is a good cost competitive country that can produce products in a very cost competitive way as well as good quality. So that's the starting point to look at. Then there was a market which justified the presence and actually for each one of us to invest and develop technology, develop suppliers in these markets. And we have developed their towers. We've developed our own LM manufacturing facility for blades that we're doubling the capacity. And we've used the Turkish product to export all the way to Australia, to Europe, and to many other countries. So the base is there. The question now is the sustainability. How sustainable is that? If you don't have a strong market in the next few years, is Turkey going to be competitive compared to every other country? What kind of legislation is it required? So there is a lot of focus that the government needs to help us on the legislation that supports the local content. So as an example, in the current mechanism they have, we don't know until now if there is any incentive for local content. So if the customer would like to have financing, so the question, is it going to focus on ECA financing as an enabler, or is it going to be on local content? That means is our operations and all of us that have operations there, how sustainable is it on the long term? This is not clear until now, and this is where we need support from the Turkish government. The R&D is an area that I think so need a lot of development, not only in Turkey, in a lot of the different countries. How much support to the R&D? How much do they evaluate latest technology, in a different way, instead of comparing it to what Javier was saying earlier and Jose about comparing it to solar? It's a completely different comparison. They need to create an energy ecosystem that have different types of technologies. Each one needs to be evaluated based on merit, different evaluation criteria. And the main question that the Turkish government, I think so they're putting emphasis on, is creating knowledge transfer and creating high-skilled jobs. That's where the focus is. And we need the regulation to support the industry, focusing on these two KPI and the sustainability of these two things.
Thank you for that, Mana. Very helpful. Now we have an interesting question from the audience, which is relevant to these issues. I will read it out to you, and then I will invite any or all of you to respond to it. Some turbine manufacturers have closed some of your production facilities in Europe. Are these decisions related to the COVID situation or related to your wider market strategy, such as focusing on further markets overseas, transferring production capacity to other markets or to other suppliers or OEMs? That is the question from the audience. Who would like to go first on that?
I think, if you allow me, I can start, because
yes, Lars.
We have recently announced the closure of factories in this case in Spain, and there has been and also earlier other activities, and what we're doing is that we are adjusting our manufacturing footprint to the products that are in demand in the marketplace. So we have to run those of our facilities that can deliver the products that are wanted by the marketplace. And in those situations where upgrades are either not physically possible or where it's not financially feasible, then we make decisions like that. That's not a pleasant part of the job, but it is a part of the job when you run a business. That is in our case not driven by COVID. That is, as sad as it may sound, part of the ordinary business that we do. So it's not a reflection of demand dips driven by the pandemic. That's not the situation.
Thank you very much, Lars, for that.
Perhaps
Marcus.
Yes, because it's, as Lars has said, we also have announced closure of facilities, especially in Germany over the last months. And it's also, again, not an issue because of the pandemic or COVID-19. It's also a pure business decision. So we were very much focused on the German market in the past. And with the breakdown of the German market over the last 1, 2, 3 years, it was clear that we have to take on more international projects, have to face more pricing pressure. And so we have to adapt the industrial footprint we have to this pricing pressure. And with this, go with a lot of our sourcing systems, with our production systems into countries, best price countries. So as Lars said, it's in many cases a very sad decision we have to take, but we also have to think about those people who are still on board. So we are losing a lot of colleagues. That's very, very sad. It's not something we have done happily, and perhaps you can also say that we have waited too long with this. This is some stuff the banks sometimes told us, that we have waited too long with this decisions. But yeah, you have to do it, especially in view of the colleagues you still have on board.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jose Luis, Javier, or Mana?
I think that, well, sorry, Jose Luis, you are muted. I go first.
Go ahead, Javier. Sorry.
Thank you, Jose Luis. Now, I think that as an industry, we have to be proud how the industry has navigated through these challenging times and this pandemic. I think that if we compare our sector with other sectors, I think that we have done a pretty good job. Investors, we are very happy and very proud of how all our employees have focused all their efforts to business continuity day after day. And I think that that's really great. And it has not had any impact in any specific factory, to be very, very, very clear. Then we have to take into account that we are a global industry with, as I said before, we are selling turbines to 82 countries. And our customers, governments, all the stakeholders are demanding from us that we remain competitive and that we remain affordable for each and every market. So our manufacturing footprint will have to be adjusted continuously to that overall demand. If not, I think that we will be failing, because in some cases we have factories that were designed to manufacture kilowatt turbines, and that today there's no demand and there's no interest on those turbines. So I think that we have to see the glass half full in this case, because the factories that we have created and the volume that we are adding to the market is always is positive, meaning that the market is growing and the market is much less affected than many other industries in this year.
Thank you, Javier. Jose Luis.
I think we were lucky to manage to have our factories fully loaded in COVID and in a growing environment. But this I agree with my colleagues. I think we need to adapt the footprint to be competitive in the markets that we serve, and locating factories and products in best competitive countries to serve the markets we operate is part of the business. It doesn't help, in our humble opinion, to have the supply chain completely fragmented all over the world, producing the same component everywhere. That's not cost efficient, and at the end is bad for consumer and for taxpayer because that's expensive. So the more we rationalize the sector, the more we standardize, the more we produce similar products in mega factories worldwide, the better for the end consumers. And there are products that the markets do not demand any longer. That is sad, but is part of the job. Not our case, but it might be our case in 3 years. So,
yeah. Okay, that is clear. One final specific question on supply chain issues, which I'm going to put to you, Mana. How would you be able to use more Turkish suppliers in your global operations?
Well, we need to do a lot of work in qualifying the suppliers, first of all. So there is some good suppliers available, but there is a big gap also in the Turkish market of different suppliers. Really put emphasis on qualifying them, not based on their product quality only, but how competitive are they in price, the sustainability of their model, EHS, a number of factors to ensure that you have the right quality suppliers. So far, we have few of them, I would say, that's been very successful, and they're global suppliers now. They're in our system and database for our global supply chain, but there is a lot more to do. Example, today you have good suppliers when it comes to towers that every one of us use out of Turkey. But whenever you come to casting, that's a big gap that you see. To bolts, that's a big gap. Generator, are they going to be competitive? So there is a lot of, there is a good starting point, but that requires a lot of time to develop them to be able to play a global role at the global supply chain.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a question on tenders and auctions, specifically the size of auctions. What is better? Which creates a more sustainable market long term? Tendering very large volumes along the lines of the YEKA model, or having lots of smaller sized projects? Who'd like to go first on that?
Steady flow, and in our view, try to avoid one-off. So decide what is the size of the market you want, give visibility, clear rules, and a steady flow of projects, so market participants can play a role. If in our view, if you do big one-off, is not good for a stable market development, because you are not going to attract the investments of all the participants. We will attract just the investments of the one that is winning that big auction.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you. Lars.
To me and to us, stability is the most important thing. So in whatever way things are structured, we need a stable, solid, long-term outlook for the industry, and I think that is really important. So stop and go is not a good way to drive our industry. So there are long-term commitments with clear volume indications, and a firm system that drives things. We would much rather have that than huge drops. Huge swings in volume from year to year, or from every second year to every second year.
Okay, thank you, Lars. Mana.
Volume is important, so volume of scale. However, that's not the determining factor. It's having projects that is sustainable and can be financed. So today we see around the world some projects that went to crazy prices, but these projects will never materialize on the ground. The reality is that these auctions have to be, regardless if it's a 50 megawatt or it's a 1 giga, there have to be someone that will understand exactly what is the threshold that will allow this project to be developed. Going beyond that, that's not going to be sustainable. Neither the developer will do it. He will not be able to find financing. That means this project will not be realized on the ground. So just a bit of a realistic expectation and just drawing the line on where is the threshold.
Okay, thank you, Mana. We have a question on offshore wind in Turkey. What is the potential are you thinking it will happen? Lars?
I think personally that Turkey has a very significant onshore potential that is more easily exploited than is the case with offshore wind. There are some projects that we're looking at in other parts of our business, but Turkey really has an impressive potential for onshore wind that I think is more easily and more economically exploited.
Okay, thank you. Javier, Vestas does offshore wind now. What do you think?
Yeah, we have just recently recaptured the 50% of the joint venture that we had with Mitsubishi, and now Vestas plays 100% both in onshore and offshore. And I think that in order to have competitive projects in offshore, you need a long-term planning. And first of all, I agree with Lars that there's plenty of very good resources in Turkey that they still have not been exploited, so there's a lot of potential. And then, of course, whenever we arrive to that point, I think that it can be explored, the offshore potential. But at the moment, I think that onshore will prevail in the market for the medium term.
Okay, thank you, Javier. We have a question on technology. Have any of you started working on your next generation of onshore turbines going beyond your 5 megawatt platforms? Who'd like to say something on that?
Well, I can say what we publicly say, that and I'm just, copying the Vestas CTO, that the bigger, the better, the cheaper might be over. So in our case, we are not interested in starting investing in new technology. I think our technology is more than competitive to give customers and consumers renewable energy way cheaper than the spot price in the markets that we operate. So you see Germany, the bottleneck is not the technology, the bottleneck is the permitting. The auctions are undersubscribed and at maximum price. So if the technology can produce at 50 and the spot price is 55, why should we keep investing in producing at 48? I think technology is good enough. I think we need to materialize economies of scale, be more rational among the market participants to share more platforms, components, suppliers, do things that make business sense, and stop the price war and stop the technology war, because this is the race to the bottom for the market participants. So in the case of Nordex, no way. So we are not going to be the one.
That's very clear.
Thank you. Lars?
That was a clear signal. Thanks for that, Jose Luis. I think we're of course looking at new technology, and I also agree. Whether it's bigger is not necessarily the issue, but of course what we have to do is to drive down cost, if for no other good reason than to raise the sad profit levels of the wind turbine manufacturers to a reasonable level. So we are of course working on new technology, and I should also not forget to mention that in the context of that, we also have resources on the engineering side in Turkey that are assisting those processes and will help us going forward. We have quite a large team now based in Turkey of excellent people that assist on the technology side, and that certainly also deserves to be mentioned in this setting here.
Thank you very much, Lars. Do any of the rest of you?
I think that I agree that we are investing a huge amount on R&D, and of course we are answering to the question. Yes, of course we are investing right now in developing our next generation product, but I will remark that it will be the most efficient product for the demands of the different markets. So the most versatile, the most efficient, the one that is more adaptable to the global market. So yes, we will have the next generation, and it will be the one that is most efficient comparing with what is demanded in the different markets and globally.
Thank you very much, Javier. Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, It is now 1:30 Central European time, 3:30 in Turkey. We've actually gone 1 minute over time now. Apologies for that. Can I thank all 5 of you panelists for the excellent discussion that you have given us and given our audience over the last 90 minutes. I'm sorry, we put some very direct questions to you, but you've given us very frank and very helpful and very insightful answers, I think. Could I just plug for the audience 2 things? The online exhibition that is taking place today still is online for another hour and a half until 5 o'clock in the afternoon Turkish time, 3 o'clock Central European time. And the next online event of the Turkish Wind Energy Association will take place. It'll be a panel discussion on investments, and it will take place on the 24th of March. So please be looking out for that. Thank you again to the 5 of you excellent panelists, and thank you to all of you in the audience for your attention and engagement. Have a very good day and take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.